Hi everyone, welcome back. So today I've got 6 different alcohol inked backgrounds that we're going to play with. So the first one, I've got a couple of stencils. These are Tim Holtz stencils and some Judikins paper. This paper, I'm going to try a different paper because this was kind of weird to work with, but it's years old and it was what was out there at the time for alcohol ink, so that's what I have. But I think Yupo would probably work quite well as well. In fact, it worked really well, so I might try that next. But I've got the Tim Holtz Ranger Crackle paste, and this is very much becoming one of my favorite pastes. I seem to use it on just about everything, and I'm literally just slapping it onto this piece of cardstock. Today I'm not making cards per se, I'm making backgrounds, so you can then turn these into cards or tags or whatever you want later on. But this is a fun way to just play with your product. So obviously this needs to dry, so I thought I'd start with these two because I have 2 different textured backgrounds, or textured, they're all textured, but like texture paste backgrounds that I'm going to use today. So just cleaning this off, and wet on wet it will clean easy. So the paste was still wet, I could use a wet wipe it off, job done. Otherwise have a tub of water next to you and just shove it in there if you're doing loads of these. So the next one, I was going to use texture paste, and I decided to use grit paste in the translucent one, so it's not completely see-through but it's not completely solid either. It's that kind of thing, and this kind of reminds me of like sugar. That's what it looks like. Don't eat it, but it looks a bit like sugar. It's that sort of texture, like wet sugar. That's what I'm trying to say, or like wet fine sand. So I just popped it over the stencil, got that all back together, and again I'm gonna wash or wipe this whitewash it before it dries. Otherwise, once it's on there, you won't get it off. So just really quickly doing that. And it's weird. It has got this sort of gritty texture. It's very cool stuff. My husband hates it because he doesn't like the feel of it, but I love it. And yeah, I just thought I'd play with that. But I did these first because I needed to dry. So these actually dried overnight because, yeah, it just made sense to do that. So 2 of these out of the next 4, we're going to emboss first. I've got like 3 sections, if you like. So the first 2, I'm going to emboss 2 embossing folders, 2 pieces, same cardstock. Using all 3D embossing folders. They're just different patterns. So that was the Country Floral, and that was a Stampin' Up! Sizzix one. The next one is a Stampin' Up! Sizzix one called Hexagons, which is kind of like looks a bit like beehives. It's very cool. So for these 2, I've got 2 that are going to be, we're going to emboss first then ink, and 2 where we're going to ink first then emboss afterwards. So it hopefully will make more sense. I know it's kind of a long video, but hopefully it'll make more sense in a bit. So the first one, I'm going to take a plain piece. It's not embossed, it's just a plain piece of the Judikins paper, and I'm going to use, I believe I've got Slate, I've got Shell Pink, some what is it? It's the Mixative in Rose Gold, so this is going to give some shimmery shine to it. And then I've also got my blending solution, which is key. I do have some Isopropal Alcohol as well, which I try and faff about with, but the blending solution works really well for me. So I've chucked some blending solution on first, then I'm literally just letting the ink come out of the bottles onto the page until I'm happy with it. I don't know what's happened to the nozzle of that thing. Looks like a funny little beak. So I've put the mixative on there, and then I added some more blending solution and just playing with it. This is what this was. The whole point of this was to play with my alcohol inks. I haven't done this for ages. I thought now's the time. So I'm just playing around with it, getting it to move. Eventually I do cover pretty much the whole panel because I want the whole thing covered. You don't have to, you know, you really don't. And you can always cut these down or cut them into, use them for die cuts later on, whatever you want to do. But I just wanted to get that sort of playtime in. That's what we're going to call it. So on the second one, for this first technique, if you like, or first group, I'm using the one that I've embossed with the Country Floral, and I'm going to take some inks again, some blending solution first, and then I've got Denim is the first colour, Amethyst is the second, and then although it's blocked and I will unblock it, is my Lettuce colour. And I don't know why I'm having trouble. This is one of the first ones I've ever owned. So maybe it's just like, yeah. So I used some alcohol on that as well. I didn't find it did anything for me. So I just carried on with the blending solution. That was the best thing. But alcohol will work. And then I added a couple of bits of the Mixative again. Probably a little too much for this particular one. And in hindsight, and my husband picked up on this afterwards, is that actually this floral one would have done well with the colours of the first one, with the shell pink and the grey, slate grey, and then when you see the embossing folder that goes with that panel, then it would have made more sense, the colours the other way around. But I really ummed and ahed about this. I wasn't sure if I liked it or not. But again, it's alcohol ink. You can keep playing for quite a long time. So now I've got another plain piece, and this time we're going to use alcohol pearls. So this has got a mica already in it. So it's got a pearlescent mica within the thing. So within the bottle. So there's a little ball in there that you have to shake until there's no sediment at the bottom. And again, I just put some blending solution on the card, and then dropped the colours in there, and then back and forth until I'm happy with the colour. And I'm picking it up and I'm moving it around, and I'm sort of playing with it to see if I can get it to do what I want it to do. Again, I try and cover the whole piece because that's what I wanted. You don't have to. You can just let it do its thing. I've done that before in previous videos a little while ago, where I just played around with it and just let it react however it's going to react, and left it, and then used that whole piece as a background, and it just looks kind of cool in the background, some white space and some sort of not white, but I wanted to cover the whole thing. So again, just playing around until I was happy with it. And this, when I started doing this, and when I did this next bit with the blending solution, when it sort of moves that color out, you'll see in a bit, it actually moved some of the pearl into that section. So it's kind of cool. It had a cool reaction. So now on the embossed piece that we've already embossed, obviously I know that made sense. So I'm using a couple of, like an orange and a green, orange and a yellow. I've got the colors listed below, so don't worry about that. And again, I started this time with just the color, and then I'll go in with the blending solution. I think it works better the other way around for me, but play with it. And again, I'm just throwing these colors. These are the pearls again. So the first two, I used the Mixative, which is a pearlescent Mixative in rose gold, and then the second two, I'm using alcohol pearl inks. So they've already got the mica in there. And again, I wanted to cover the whole panel. So for me with this, whether I embossed it before or afterwards, I don't feel like I actually got too much of a different reaction. It didn't seem to make much difference, but I still like it. It's still a cool thing to do. So for this, the first one, I'm going to go back in and just add some more. I wanted to cover that page, that piece, sorry, so that it was covered completely pretty much. So I just went back in. That's a nice thing about alcohol inks. You can go back to it time and time again till you're happy with it. Happy. So anyway, so I kept moving around. So this one has the Mixative in it. So it has like these sort of areas of that pearlescent color, and so does this one, as opposed to the other two where the mica is in, the pearlescent is in the ink already. So these are the two now dry of the texture pastes, nice and dry, so we'll play with those in a minute. So these are all the panels. This is actually the next day. I came back to it, and like I say, the ones that have where I embossed first, I don't get a different totally different reaction to it. So I don't know. I also am using, there's a couple of things. One, I think, is the paper. You know, the paper's great, but I think there's something in the paper that you use. The other thing I think is I'm using my Cuttlebug plates in my Big Shot for the embossing part, and I think maybe I need an extra shim so I get more depth in my 3D embossing folders, or from them. So I think possibly it's a combination. So, you know, without trying and playing, you're not going to know. So for me, I think there should have been more reaction to those inks when you've got the ink, when you've got the embossing first as opposed to embossing afterwards. Both look really nice. I'm still going to use them at some point, but it wasn't as reactive as I thought it was going to do. It didn't quite work the same way. So yeah, I love them all. They actually turned out better than I thought, but you know, it is what it is. So so basically I've got these first two now. I'm going to sand one of them. So I'm going to sand these first two, I'm sanding both of these, and the other two I'm not going to sand. So I'm sanding over this floral, country floral, I think it's called, over the top. I realized I wrapped a piece of sanding paper, whatever it's called, around an acrylic block, so I had a handle. I actually found it easier without the handle. So if you have an actual sanding block, that's probably the easiest. But you basically are sanding off some of the sort of raised areas. And so I also learned, because it's the first time I was doing this, that it's actually, you can be a bit more aggressive than you think you need to be. I was being a bit of a girl, let's face it, when I was doing this. And so I was being too careful. You can actually be kind of rough with it and sort of sand quite a lot. So I go back and forth on this panel especially. A couple times, but where you've got that exposed, you can either leave it like that just because another bit of interest in the background, or you can ink over the top because that's now exposed paper. It will absorb ink. So I don't do that in this video, but that's something else you could do. I also then, with the Mechanics, which is a Tim Holtz embossing folder, I love this thing, where the silver is of the Mixative, you can't really see it on camera. Hopefully I'll be able to show you at the end when I slow down the footage, but it kind of gave it like a brushed steel look. It was very cool. So of course I was like, no, I'm doing it, I'm going in again, and I just went in and all different directions, so you know, went in circles and back and forth and side to side and whatever, but it works. It looks very cool. So again, I went back to the floral one and sanded and sanded and sanded until I was happy with it. And this is where I was realizing that actually I can sand it quite a lot before, you know, I'm not damaging it. I'm making it more interesting, because there's also lots of little bits in the background that are maybe not as high as those roses. So what we have, if I do it in the right order, is we embossed two where we embossed first and then inked, two that we inked and then embossed, and then two of them that we sanded over the top. So that's the basics, but I'll go over it at the end of it as well. So I'm going to use the pearl inks again on the two pieces that I used some texture paste. So this is the Crackle paste that I used, and I've got a blue and a sort of brown tone. Again, the colors will be listed below the video, and the blending solution. So pop some blending solution on there, and then just start letting the ink drop onto that. I'm not shaking the bottle too much. I'm not squeezing it. It's just coming out. I had issues with my lettuce earlier, but you know, that thing's like over 10 years old now, so I'm not surprised it's having a moment. So again, just going in and adding blending solution. I don't know if you need to add this much blending solution, but it works for me, so I'm going to use it. And also I'm using my product, so otherwise it just goes stale, or I don't know what happens to it, but I don't know how long it would last. I've had that with product in the past where I've just not used it because I'm too scared to use it, and then you find that you can't use it anymore. So I used a bit of alcohol, isopropal alcohol on it as well, just to see if I couldn't get that colour to sort of move around. But eventually I'm just going back and forth with the other product, the blending solution, and the colour will then sit and get into the cracks, and it just does this very cool thing because of the crackle in the paste. So again, just going back to areas where I thought, no, it's still too pale or too white, and just adding some more into that. Now, because these were the mini stencils that I used, I can cut this into like a strip and then put that on the center of a card or something like that, which I think would look really nice. And I love that color, the blues and the browns kind of thing. And then for the second one, this is the grit paste that is kind of, what's it called, translucent. So to start with, I had a green and a purple, but I changed my mind and went with more of a coppery brown kind of colour. I love this combo. These again are the pearls, same as the one we used on the Crackle background, and I love this combination of colour as well. These two together just work. I don't know why, but they work. I don't know if it's sort of got like a more coppery tone in this brown as opposed to the one previously, but it just works so well. So the back of a paintbrush is always handy. You can use your finger as well, just to kind of, while it's wet, just move that so that you lose your white spots. But yeah, and then I took my heat gun and very quickly moved the air around. I'm not holding it on there at all because that will probably do some weird stuff that I don't want it to do. But just to move it around. You could use a hairdryer probably at that point for things like this, but I just used that because the heat's, you've got to be careful because the heat's really hot, if that makes any sense. And then I went back with the blending solution, and as I was putting this onto the grit paste itself, it created almost like a halo around the flowers, which is also very cool. But I also then went back over the flowers themselves with some of the colours, there's two colours, but with the purple, and just to try and make that more defined. In the end it's quite dark, so I do off camera, I actually went and added a little more and played again a bit more, which is another thing that is so cool about alcohol inks, is that you can go back to it afterwards and just add some more blending solution or add a bit more alcohol ink and re-change it over and over. And I just think it's the coolest thing. I mean, you can't do that with like watercoloring or alcohol markers or things like that. I mean, once the color's on, it's on, sort of thing. But with alcohol inks, man, you can do so many things. So I keep playing with this, drying off a bit more, and then that's sort of more or less where they're going to stay. It just was very, very cool. So this is the first one. We embossed this one first, then we alcohol inked it, and then we sanded it. And this one was using a couple of the colors, 3 colors, and the Mixative, which is different to the pearl inks that we use. Then we moved on to this one and we inked the background first, then embossed it, and then sanded over the top as well. I don't know if I said that on the last one, but we did sand that one as well. So these first 2 we sanded. And again, we used the Mixative in rose gold and a couple of the colours to give that sort of... the Mixatives tend to sort of sit in areas, whereas this one, we embossed this first, then inked it with the alcohol pearlings, and the pearl is already in the ink, so it like spread out. It spreads the love. It spreads the pearl all over the place, whereas the Mixatives tend to stay in a certain area. And then with this one, we actually inked the background first with the pearls again, and then embossed it and didn't sand these the second two. This one was the Crackle paste, texture Crackle paste, that we put on there, let it completely dry, and then use some alcohol ink pearls again to ink that background. And it just gives this beautiful, I just love this color combination. These two color combinations and the pink one, funny enough, are my favorite, the pink and silver one. And then on this second one, we used the pearls again. I could have tried using a mixative on one of these actually if I thought about it. And this is the grit paste in a translucent grit paste, sorry. And a couple of the colors that already have the pearl in them, so not using the mixative. There is also a product called an alloy, which is a whole different thing to these two, to the pearl and the mixatives. When I get my hands on some of that, I will share that with you as well. But I hope you enjoyed this, guys. I hope you drag out your alcohol inks if you have them and play. Like I say, I think I need to change my paper, but yeah, it was so much fun. I'm so excited about them again. So until next time, guys, I will see you then. Bye.